Welcome back, folks. And we are, I was just telling Steve, we're in our final show, the season finale. And, I tell you what, Steve, as we talk about that, as we talk about, the first season that we were in, the first thing I was thinking of, because we did our first broadcast earlier this week. And man, I'll tell you what, I have not that I didn't already, but I have a ton of respect for the people that do that for a living. We got to talk to a lot of them this year. We said at the beginning of the year, we're going to promote anybody who promotes baseball. And there are some people that have been doing it for a long time, and they're really good at it. And I got a ton of respect for them. Of course, we're talking about, and fill me in if I'm missing anybody here. You've got the ISC Sports Network. With Greg Rakestraw, you got Bob Lovell, Paul Condry. I've got to throw a big shout out, of course, to Keith Myers at Indiana Sports Radio Network. He's doing a fantastic job, and they're growing every day. They did both of the North-South All-Star games this weekend. Did a fantastic job. They did some radio for the state finals this year. Of course, up north, you've got the Region Sports Network. So, a lot of people have been doing this for a long time. I think, you talked to Bob Lovell a few times this year. Who am I missing here as we talk about people who cover baseball so well in Indiana?
Well, I mentioned last week Hal Welter at WKVI up there in Northwest Indiana did it for over 50 years. Walt Ferber at Jasper just retired to WITZ. He did it for over 40 years. I think on his broadcast career, probably close to 50. He's from Jeffersonville, so two guys from both ends of the state. Did a lot of other sports, but a lot of baseball.
Well, and
Walt did the Du Bois County Bombers too.
Okay. The down there in beautiful League Stadium, and we're going to talk about this more towards the end as we look going ahead. But one of the things we want to continue to do or do a better job at, as we graded ourselves there at the beginning, you gave us a B minus. I would be more in the C minus range. I would give you closer to the A and me closer to the to the D, but. We want to promote anybody that's promoting baseball. So, we're going to be talking to these guys, because it's hard to cover that many teams that play that many games. So I think a network of affiliates is the answer going forward. We'll talk about that a little bit towards the end. Also, got to give a shout out to the people that have been with us from day one. I'm talking about our crew, of course. Steve Craw. I wouldn't couldn't do this without you. I was talking to Brian Abbott earlier today, the director of the High School Baseball Coaches Association. And I said, that's why I got this guy. That's why I got Steve Craw. His mind is a computer. He knows absolutely every name. He remembers the stats of the fifth batter in the lineup for the Little League state championship 20 years ago. Your mind is a computer. So, and I love what you do.
I don't know what I had for breakfast yesterday, but I remember that.
Well, we both got a little gray hair under our hats, but also going to give a shout out to the guys that have helped us plan this, and they're not on the show every week, but I'm not saying they won't be, but I'm talking about Chris Beecham, I'm talking about Sweet Lou in Lafayette, Jeff Luzetter. I'm talking about Mark Della Garza of the Summit City Sluggers up in Fort Wayne, and all the people we've talked to really to make this happen. And I like I said, they're not on the show every week, but kind of the goal of this is to get a lot of baseball people on board, and mix and match it and mix it up a little bit. The first year we're getting our feet wet and learning the ropes, but we're getting there, and I'm pretty excited about it. We got to talk to some pros this year. How excited! That was kind of a mixed blessing because we got to talk to them because of the lockout at the beginning of the year. So we got a chance to talk with Lance Lynn, Kevin Kiermeyer, Josh Van Meter. Who am I missing here? Shamanaya. Who was from New Albany and Jeffersonville down there. We talked to both of them. Trying to think of them off the top of my head. And that's another reason I'm glad to have you on. Yeah, Drew Ellis. We got a chance to talk to Drew Ellis. And we did a lot of interviews, folks, that we haven't even posted yet. just because we just for time's sake we talked to so many people at the beginning of the year that we didn't get a
You
chance
talking
to get
Nick
them all on.
Whitgren from
Nick,
from Lafayette.
yep,
He's with the
and
Cardinals now.
Nick Whitgren had a great little blurb of information, or I don't know what you want to call it, advice, on the Father's Day special we had just a week ago. And Nick Whitgren had a great story about his first year down in Miami, and how one of the other players took him under his wing, when he was a rookie. And this other player had a wife and kids, and how he left baseball in the baseball field and didn't bring it home is just a great little testimony, I guess you would call it, by Nick Whitgren there that I really loved. But let's talk about why we are here today, and that is that we are talking about the BAI 9. Now, what is the BAI 9? Let's talk about that for a second. Steve, when we talked about this idea, how daunting it was. First of all, how difficult was it even to get the North-South All-Star teams picked that we looked at this weekend, but now try to get it down to 9. And, how difficult is that task?
Very much so. I know that a lot of people picking honor teams like that will add a lot of extra people, and we will have 7 pitchers and we'll have 5 outfielders instead of 3, and we'll do that, and that's not what we decided to do, so you got to leave something out. I mean, I was telling you a story about picking an all area basketball team back in good friend Anthony Anderson. He always would put 6 on there because he couldn't figure out, this guy deserves to be there as much as that guy. And he put, and I would always just kid him. I said, well, 6 guys don't get to be on the floor at the same time. You're 6th man, first guy off the bench. So, but yeah, not an easy thing. The lower the number means that these are impact players for sure, and elite. But yeah, it's tough to pick that from. Well, what do we figure out? 384 teams went into the state tournament. That doesn't even include the other
right
players that play for non-affiliated. So if you take 384 times 15 minimum on their team, some teams have 11 players, and some programs have 50 in their program. But whatever the number is, we're talking about from thousands of potential players.
Well, and what angle do you look at? That's another thing. Do you look at it just with the credentials as far as arm speed? Look at what I call the PBR stats. And we talked to PBR, and that's maybe the first thing we need to talk about is who all did we talk to? How did we come up with our BAI 9? How did we find these players? Well, we did a lot of things. Number one, yes, we did look at stats, but stats wasn't obviously not the whole game. We talked to PBR because they are the source when it comes to those hard statistics, or not statistics, those measurements when it comes to things like bat speed, arm speed, things like that. But this isn't a projectability top 9. This is a top 9 based on the season that they had. And we didn't want to limit it to just one position or just one grade, did we? We wanted to open it up. So, in that regard, it could be anywhere from freshman to senior. Obviously, we didn't have any freshmen. We did have some underclassmen, though. And a lot of people say, well, stats cannot be accurate because you're comparing maybe a person that has a low schedule strength and that really gets their stats really high, or they're only pitching against the teams that they should beat really strong. So those factors came into play as well. That's why we talked to coaches all over the state. If we didn't have their stats, we had the names because we, just in the circles of people that we talked to, we were able to get names and actually find some people, with great stats that we weren't real familiar with their name. But at the end of the day, the end result, what this comes down to, and the BAI 9 Think of it as the top 9 impact players. What do we mean by impact players? We mean the top 9 players that had the most impact for their team, and that's one factor. Then the other factor is also, now they also need to have stats that measure up in the higher echelons of players across the state. That's measure number 2. Measure number 3 is the eyeball test. That's where we talk. That's where, Steve and I and the crew, we're seeing players all across the state, but we also want to get the opinions from coaches as well as umpires that we've talked to across the state. Obviously, we're not going to mention the umpires' names, but so we've talked to a lot of people. And let's go through. Steve, any thoughts before we reveal this on maybe some going forward, how we want to look at the top 9? How would you I asked you at the beginning, grade our performance for season 1, grade our evaluation on this BAI 9 selection process. Anything you think we can change or add to?
Well, I'm sure it can be tweaked. I think the idea of using the eyeball test, using experts, but also the numbers, all of those things, strength of schedule. I know that you created algorithms, and I know how to spell algorithm. I think I know how to create an algorithm, but you do, and other people, can crunch those things, so it makes it fair. I mean, you're going to get a lot of all these people that were picked, are not flying under the radar for sure, because people that know who these people are, but some are going to be more than others, but they just had fantastic seasons. And it was this season. It's not a career award. It's not a projectability, like you said. It's what they did this year. I mean, it's hard, to deny the profiles of some of these guys and what they're where they're headed and all that kind of stuff, what they've done already, played in big, showcases and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But, and in other cases, they didn't. So that's what's kind of cool about this.
Well, and going off your point there, before we start going through the list, there is, there are some players that aren't on this list that we're going to be seeing playing in the Major League Baseball in a handful of years. There are some specialty players that really have fantastic arms and can really crush the ball or have great speed that might not be on this list, because when we're looking at overall player value of each individual player, I want you to think of it as the WAR statistic. Now, if you're not a diehard baseball fan, you might not know what the WAR sabermetric is. WAR stands for wins above replacement, and we won't go into the whole spiel on how WAR is configured, or even if it is a valid stat. A lot of people can't stand the WAR stat, but it's not, I want you to just think of that and how we selected these players. Wins above replacement, not by replacing, you're not comparing the player to other players across the state. I'm saying if you take that player off of that team, what is the impact on that team? That's what we were talking about when we said the impact on their team. Now, that's a big factor. But equally, then the statistics come in. They had to have upper echelon level statistics, and then of course, coaches and media recommendations as well. I do want to give a big shout out to Tom Gandolf of Gandolf Bats. Look him up on Google or Facebook. I think it's gandolfbats.com. Don't quote me on that, but look it up on Google, on Twitter, on Facebook. Gandolf Bats, because each one of these 9 players got a absolutely, I don't know what the kids say. What do the kids say? Lit? I better be careful what I'm saying, because I don't know what these young words mean. But they are the coolest thing in the world. These bats that say BAI or 2022 BAI 9, then it has their name and school on it, and they are really slick. And we got to hand out 6 of them today. Then we have 2 more we still have to hand out, just because they're out of town or doing things like that. They're playing baseball, so we couldn't meet up with them. So let's start, and let's get to our first And these are alphabetical by first name, folks. Our first player who has made the BAI 9. And I'll tell you just right off the top here, let's throw some statistics at you before you see the name. Let's start with batting statistics. In 102 plate appearances, he had a 403 average and 637 on base percentage. Had 11 home runs, which basically tied him for third in the state. But you add on 2 doubles and a triple to that. Now that's just pitching statistics. Now let's go talk about this young man's, that was batting statistics rather. Now let's talk about hitting. In his strikeouts per innings pitched, he was 1.79, just under 1.8 strikeouts per inning. Struck out 45% of batters he faced. Only 11 earned runs all year. Held his opponent batting average to 129, and with an opponent on base percentage of just right around 0.22. Who we're talking about? Our first recipient of the BAI 9 for the top impact players for 2022. And I continue to talk slow because as I wait for my computer to catch up, it is Aiden Coffey, there we go, of Monroe Central. Talked to him today, and I'll tell you what, I absolutely love the Monroe Central uniforms. He, ironically, is not a big fan of the San Diego Padres look. Steve, have you got a chance to see this young man play? And, he's talented top to bottom, and he's one example of...
Yes, I saw him this weekend at the All-Stars, but I did see him during the season, and he's an impact player for sure. He plays third base usually when he's not pitching. This picture might not do him justice as far as height. He's a tall guy. You can see the arms he's got on him. So that's a lot of these guys. He isn't a stranger to the weight room.
He's sporting some ink there too. He's
support.
Got the
he's going. I kidded him. Like you said to the San Diego Padres, and I said, well, your school colors are brown and gold, so that's an easy thing to go to. You think? And I said, well, you'll get to wear some teal because he's going to Coastal Carolina for college.
That's right, D1 Coastal Carolina.
That's their primary. The Chanticleers. You know what a Chanticleer is?
I have no idea, but I'm hoping you do.
I think it's like a gamecock. It's a bird.
That's a bird.
It's a fierce bird. Ask Coach De La Garza. His son played there.
Really?
He could probably
Aiden
give
Coffey.
us a spiel.
Congratulations
congratulations to Aiden.
That's right. Our first bat, and actually, ironically, I think I handed him the first bat. So he was the first person other than me and Tom Gandalf to hold one of these bats right there. So let's... there is our first selection for the BAI 9. Now, looking at Aiden there, I'm going to talk about a trend because one trend that you'll see is that a lot of these guys have, they're bringing not only, they're bringing multi-dimensions to their team. Because when we talk player value, it can't just, you would have to be really good to only have one thing that you bring to the table. And so a lot of these guys, they're bringing, high on base percentage, quality at bats, as well as, maybe something in the field or, a pitching component. So they're adding multiple aspects. So you have to be a really good pitcher. And if that's all you do, if all you do is pitch, you're going to have to be really good if you want to make the BAI 9. And that brings us to our next player earning the BAI 9 award. And it is one of those players, and the only one of those players, who is a specialist. You probably already know who I'm talking about. 106 strikeouts on the year in arguably one of the toughest schedules in all of high school baseball in Indiana. He averaged 2.2 strikeouts per innings pitched. He struck out 54% of the batters he faced. He just recently made it known because the word was, is he going to, what's going to happen if he gets drafted? Because he has a very high projectability in this year's upcoming Major League Baseball draft, but he recently announced he is staying at Vanderbilt. He is committed to Vanderbilt, I believe, as a sophomore, maybe a freshman, Steve. I can't remember which one it was, but he just announced recently, and you got a chance to
I think
talk to him.
he's been talking to him for, man, since he was like 15 years old. Yeah, so for at least 3, 4 years.
And so he's staying at Vanderbilt. And this summer, actually, I think he's taking the. I don't want to say taking the summer off. He's not sleeping on the couch, but he's getting his workouts in and everything like that. He's working on
He
his.
wants to build upper body strength and give his arm a break.
That's right.
So he's going to be in the weight room.
So you're not going to see him on the mound this summer, but you're going to see him in the weight room. And so Andrew Dukanich, I think this was, almost all of these guys. We talked to coaches all across the state. This is one of them that got a unanimous vote, because he was all the rave coming into the year. Every preseason sports analysis, sports season preview show, everything from ours to, Akeem Gillespie's with Indianapolis Star, all over the state. Every single one of them put this guy as the number one player in the state. So,
The
we didn't
Coaches
want to give it to him.
Association voted him as the player of the year, too.
That's right. So, but we weren't just going to give it to him. He had to, this award wasn't projectability, but his stats lived up to it for sure. He had a fantastic season, and again, one of the, the big factors that sold it to me was his schedule strength. They were playing a very tough schedule, and he still led the state. Well, actually, he was number 2 in the state in strikeouts per innings pitch as well as strikeouts per batters faced. Ironically, the person who was number 1 in both of those categories, and I forgot his name for the life of me, maybe you'll remember it, was the pitcher for Morristown. So I got to give him a nod because he was number 1 in the state for strikeouts per innings pitched and strikeouts per batters faced. But schedule strength alone and the quality of season produced by the Duke, Andrew Dukanich, the Vanderbilt commit, is why he is the second in our 2022 BAI 9. That leads us to our next one, and like I said, you not a lot of specialists in this list. So if you don't pitch or if you don't have any stolen bases, you better be able to swing a bat. You better be able to produce for your team. And our next winner of BAI recognition, let's just throw some of these batting stats for you. And this guy started the year, and Steve and I both said he started the year, and we thought he was going to, he was on pace to break the state record for home runs, which is by, ironically, 21. The person who threw out the first pitch today at the Wood Bat game currently still holds that record from 88, 86, was it, Steve? You were there, I can't remember.
Here's his son played in the All-Star Series. He's from Marion, so he was my son goes to Oak Hill, or just graduated from Oak Hill. Okay. He was on the All-Star. Pierce. Decker. Oh, what we did is give it away. There were 3 Deckers.
That's all right. I think everybody knew this was coming.
Yeah, Cameron Decker hit 6 home runs in his first 3 games of the season. So we kidded him and said, you kind of tailed off. You're on pace for about 42 home runs this year.
Well, I don't think I think everybody knew this was coming. I talked to coaches all across the South on this one, and the first name they mention is Cam Decker. We're talking 12 home runs, number two in the state. In 115 plate appearances, he batted 447 with a 617 on base percentage, five doubles and three triples to go along with that. At one stage, yeah, he was just absolutely on fire. And I was
You got to believe
talking
that
to,
the opponents were really real careful pitching to him.
yeah. Well, I was, we of course talking to PBR. PBR also says, "Yep, Cam Decker. He's got to be one of them." But I also talked to what I call the other PBR, which is just my funny way of saying the parent baseball recruiting network. That's the dad wire, if you will. All the games I go to, and talking to a lot of these parents, the dads that are at the game, and these dads know their stuff. I mean, they know players' names because in the travel ball circuit and everything like that, they get to see everybody. And there was a parent actually for Center Grove saying that he said this about 2-3 months ago, that said Cam Decker, when he is on, there is no more dangerous of hitter in the state when he is on his game. So I mean, that is, it's not just us saying it. It is people across the state, from parents to coaches alike. So there is our third on the list of the
Cam
BAI
Decker going
9.
to Central Florida,
Central Florida.
UCF. Yep, that's where he's going to college.
Well, we're proud to call him a Hoosier now. Let's go to our next, and I got to find him here on my list. Our next member of the BAI 9. Let's set it up here. Let's show you some stats. First of all, let's talk. Which do I want to pick here? Do I want to pick batting first, or do I want to pick pitching first? Because this guy was amazing in both. Let's start with pitching first. Oh, actually, let's start with hitting first. Average 525. 525 batting average. That's top 10 in the state right there. 627 on base percentage. No home runs, but 7 doubles and a triple. Now that, you could say that by itself, that's a fantastic season, but is it enough to get you in the BAI 9? Well, now let's talk pitching. A 1.7 strikeouts per innings pitched. He struck out 45% of the batters he faced. Only 5 earned runs all year, with a 0.85 batting average. Our next BAI top 9 impact player of the year, the Heritage Patriots, Dalton Wasson. And I tell you what, Steve, I was talking to Brian Abbott again earlier today when I stopped by the North-South Wood Bat game, and he said, man, he just couldn't say enough good things about Dalton Wasson. Just the ball hopping off his bat. It said it was like a cannon coming off there. And he plays up in northern Indiana there, and so maybe coming into the season, he might not have been how do you want to say, maybe a everyday name. But people up in that part of the state, they knew about him, and I think he got an award from one of the other organizations up there, wasn't it, Steve? The Northeast
Yeah, the
Indiana.
Northeast Indiana Baseball Association, which they had their coaches nominate players from around the Fort Wayne area, and Dalton was the winner. And Dean Lehrman, this was his 43rd season coaching the Heritage Patriots there in Rowville, Indiana. He said that this is our Roy Hobbs, the best that ever was. So
Wow.
you talk about impact players, you take that guy away from the team. He's talking about him in those glowing terms, and they've had some good ball players at Heritage over the years. But
do we need to explain to the kids who Roy Hobbs was?
He's going to Belmont, and Nashville.
For you young kids that don't know who Roy Hobbs is, look up the movie The Natural, and one of the best
I saw
baseball
The
movies
Natural
ever made.
I think The Natural is playing all the time. I saw it on the cable last night. I didn't stop and watch too much of it because I've seen it so many times. But
One of those
always find it.
It's one of those PBS TBS movies that are on like every week. Yeah. Let's talk
Right.
about our next guy here. And I believe, I'm looking at the others here, I believe this is our first underclassman. And yeah, I'm doing my alphabet right. Make sure I'm talking about the right person here. Now, I'll tell you, Steve mentioned at the beginning of the show that one of the ways we looked at players, now this wasn't, we're not putting this list all based on math equations, but I am a nerd about more than just baseball. Actually a nerd for a living. So I made an algorithm and I put in all batting components based on a minimum number of plate appearances, as well as pitching components, on base statistics like stolen bases, things like that. In that algorithm, this person was number one in the state, and he's an underclassman. Let's start with the thing that maybe sets him apart from everybody else in this list, and that is 44 stolen bases. Now, these statistics uh, don't count playoffs, but going into the playoffs, 44 stolen bases. Let's talk hitting. 127 plate appearances, so he definitely meets the minimum. 412 batting average, 551 on base percentage, 10 home runs. That's that puts him right there around third or fourth, tied for third or fourth in the state. 10 doubles. That also puts him in the top 10 in the state. And also, add a triple onto that as well. Now let's also add in the fact that he had just under 1.4 strikeouts per innings pitched. That's 35% of the batters he faced, he struck out with a 0.85 ERA. And I do have to make a correction here real quick. I said that Aiden Coffey earlier had a 0.85 ERA. Aiden Coffey actually had a 1.74 ERA. Doesn't change a thing. He's still but Hogan Denny is who we're talking about now with a 0.85 ERA, sophomore. And I caught up with him. I could probably do better on that picture right there. I apologize, Hogan. But I caught him at kind of the last minute before we, just at the last thing before we came home and started putting together some of these pictures real quick. So, and I talked to his dad, Tim, today. Another great guy who knows baseball. As a matter of fact, he's probably listening right now. He said he listens to us every week. And, he was pretty proud of what Hogan's done. Only he'll be a junior next year. So also, just recently, I believe it was, I think it was actually before the season start, committed to IU. So he's staying in state. So Hogan Denny,
See that
our
three
first,
stripe life shirt he's got wearing there?
what's that? Yes,
Oh, he's wearing a three stripe life shirt there with IU logos. So figured he
as
was to be.
yeah, and a good kid too. Strong. I tell you what, before as we move forward here, just a pause before we get to as we keep moving forward. But some of the guys we saw like on the North South All Star game, and Hogan here is only a sophomore. These look like men. I mean, maybe I'm just old, but we joked about it the other day on the show how we're old enough now where we can get by with saying the words "kids these days." But I tell you what, kids these days are men these days. These guys on this list, they are physically fit. Just showing once again that I think baseball right now is as high as it has ever been in the high school age level. Now, maybe not as many playing, so maybe not as a whole. The baseball level is as high as it used to be in certain years past. But the top level players in our state, you take the top 50 players in Indiana, and I'll take them up against the top 50 in any state in the country. And that's because of the people we're talking about right here. Little tangent there, but let's keep on moving. Our next player is another one that, like we said, if you're bringing to the table only one category of play, then that one category better be solid. And as we talk about this next player, he didn't do any pitching. He may have had a few throwaway innings. I'm not for sure of. But here's, the stats. Let's talk about the stats first of all. Batting average 493, on base percentage 622, 10 home runs, that puts him in the top 4 in the state, 6 doubles and a triple. And but those are good stats by themselves, but as I talk to many coaches and I talked to a few in the Hoosier Crossroads Conference, and they all had one thing to say, and that is the toughest out in the arguably toughest conference in Indiana, the toughest out in that Hoosier Crossroads Conference is this guy right here, Joe Huffman of Avon. And Steve, we could talk about this for a while. Just the players in the Hoosier Crossroads Conference. Some of the coaches I talked to, I'm like, coaches, we got to narrow it down to 9. I don't know if I can narrow it down to 9 in your conference alone, because it was so loaded with talent. When they said, and I've seen him play, this guy, and he showed it this weekend in the North South games. This guy can flat out hit, and when I have multiple coaches in the Hoosier Crossroads Conference tell me that this is the toughest out in the Hoosier Crossroads Conference, that sells it to me. It's kind of the same thing that the coaches down in the southern part of the state, including the Southern Indiana Conference, said that Cam Decker is the toughest out in the whole southern part of the state, maybe the whole state. That aspect right there, when multiple coaches say that, it passes my eyeball test, and the statistics are there. This is a solid candidate right here, and a solid winner from the Avon Orioles. You got to see him play a little bit this weekend, Steve. What's your thoughts on Joe Huffman?
Very, very solid, solid hitter, and athletic like a lot of these guys are. I was looking to
Yeah.
see what he did. Well, the first time he came to the bat on Saturday in Game 2, he had a hit. Yeah, he just produced all the way around.
Yeah, all weekend too. Um, and one dimensional. I don't want to call hitting one dimension, but one category of measurement. As we go to the next one, you can probably make out on that picture who we're going to talk about. But let's throw some stats here at you. We talked earlier at the show here on how Andrew Dukanich was just all the rave. He was the trending topic in the baseball world, well, not just in Indiana, really, all across the country. Well, so was this next kid, and you know who I'm talking about. 106 plate appearances, 577 batting average. I believe that was number 1 in the state. If not, it was number 2 or right around there. But with the schedule strength aspect, number 1 batting average in the state. 717 on base percentage, 9 home runs, 8 doubles, 2 triples, 25 stolen bases. Obviously, you know who we're talking about. We're talking about Max Clark, the sensation from Franklin Community. And Steve, I was watching some. I wasn't able to meet him yet to get him his bat because I think he's down in Georgia right now playing for. I can't remember. Is it USA? The USA team. I can't, just drew a blank on it. But this was another one where Max Clark, Andrew Dukanich. Okay, obviously projectability. People who do it better than us have already projected them to be in the upper echelons of players, not just in Indiana, but in the country. But going into this, for matter of fact, all 5 of us, talking at the early on when we talked about starting this award, at the beginning of the season, we said we're not just going to give it to people based on their name. Max Clark, like Dukanich, had to earn it. And my land, did he ever. With that 717 on base percentage, which I believe was number 1 in the state. The matter of fact, they were Barry Bondsing him there for a good part of the season, just walking him. But he can flat
You know
out
what I
rake.
think?
Go ahead.
When I think of him, what I know, is that he and his buddies, since they were about 10 years old, have been getting together and working out and hitting and pitching and in the weight room and what have you, just to make themselves better. So, flash forward 6, 7 years later, and look what you got. Max is that much better and one of the better players in that country. Uh, the draft this year, he might get, if he goes high enough in the draft, he might.
Well,
He's not draft eligible.
he's
He's
got
not
one more
draft
year to
eligible.
go, but
If the draft, yeah, I'm okay. I'm getting ahead of myself. The 23 draft, they're already talking about the 23 draft. That's what
yeah.
I mean.
Well, and he
And
was,
so we'll see what happens between now and then.
and I don't know where he's at right now with the latest projections, but even during the season, multiple sources gave him, as far as the 2023 draft, projected number one overall pick. So there's some clout there behind him as well, but he continues to produce, and a great kid too. We talked to him earlier in the year. Matter of fact,
You didn't even mention his pitching stats. He's a good pitcher.
yeah, he actually is a good pitcher, and I don't,
But
I didn't put him in
his
there because
hitting is
we
what his hit tool
we
is his
didn't really
big
even need
thing.
him. We didn't even really need the pitching stats for him to make this list. But a great kid too. We had a chance earlier in the season. If you didn't get on our high school season preview show, we actually brought in Kevin Kiermaier, the center fielder for the Tampa Bay Rays, as a graduate of Lures. Yeah, Lures or Norwell. Help me out. I keep forgetting.
Lures.
Lures, yeah, Fort Wayne Lures graduate and Gold Glove winner, center field for the Rays. And of course, we wanted him to talk to Max Clark. And what was cool to me was, of course, when I'm talking to these pros, I'm just like a little 12-year-old kid. I still get excited talking to him. But Max was the same way. He was totally excited about talking to Kevin Kiermaier. And Max has been on ESPN and everything like that. And jokingly, I told him at the end, I'm like, well, I know this interview with Hardy the Hat Guy is going to be the pinnacle of your career, but all kidding aside, he was excited about it, and he enjoys the game, and you can see it. He brings a lot of excitement to it. Just he keeps the game young. So that is Max Clark, and I accidentally backed up a little bit. Let's go forward because we have two more to talk about for our BAI 9. And Steve, ironically, with just about 10 minutes left in the show, this might be the first show where we actually made it within the time frame. Usually, we started out the year talking about having an hour-long show, and of course, I start talking, and 2 hours later, we're still going. So our next player on the list, and he's a good one. The matter of fact, before we talk about some of these amazing stats, one of the things we joked about with the coaches early on was trying to get this list down to 9. We're going to make some people mad, and and this one was another one where we really had to think. We're narrowing this field down to 9. How legitimate of a top 9 is it going to be if we have two players from the same team? Well, let's throw some stats here at you on the other player on the team of a player we already mentioned. Batting average 469. Not too bad. It's not too bad for this list. That put him in the top 9 anyway. But also in a tough conference, 4A conference, they were number 1 throughout the year. 562 on base percentage, and then we just keep getting better. 16 doubles, number 2 in the state, I believe. 13 home runs, number 1 in the state. Oh yeah, he also struck out 1.2 batters per inning pitched. He struck out 28% of the batters he faced with a 1.74 ERA. We're talking about Indiana Wesleyan commit Nick Wiley. And again, I talk slow here just to let my computer try to catch up. The 6'6", I believe he is, Steve. We were standing next to him and at the field today.
About 240.
Yeah, that South team had,
We're,
matter of
we're,
fact, I think.
we're talking about how they could have put a football team together, and he said, well, they tell me I should be the defensive end on that football team.
Well,
I
I'd
believe
put
it.
him at tight end, because this guy can flat. I mean, he's 6'6" and he can run. I don't know if you saw
Well,
the
he stole
game.
a base today.
He did.
Yeah, he
He
can
stole a
run.
base,
Yeah.
and he the game was it game two, and I'm trying to get back to it here on my screen. Was it game two or not? There was a ball hit to not I don't want to say shallow center field, but it wasn't deep center field. It was just kind of a routine center field play. He tags up at second and makes it all the way to third on a cannon throw. This guy can run. So this is one of 5 players that have signed with Indiana Wesleyan that were at the North-South All-Star game. As far as not just this top 9, but as far as the top players in the state going to college within the state, Indiana Wesleyan's recruiting class was as good as anybody's in the state. And part of it was because they got this guy right here, Nick Wiley, who led the state in extra base hits, home runs. He was second in doubles. Matter of fact, he had 2 home runs versus Center Grove in that was a sectional or regional win this year. It was sectional, the sectional win in that sectional there at Center Grove that had Mooresville and Center Grove both in it, the number 1 and number 2 teams in the state. So we're down to 1. We got 1 player left. We had 2 underclassmen. If you look at the list here, primarily 4A teams, but not all of them. And that brings us to our last player alphabetically. And I was so excited. He earned this award, but his dad has also been a longtime coach, and he is retiring this year as the last of his kids have made it through the high school. Let's throw some stats here at you. And where do you start? Pitching, hitting, stolen bases. He did it all. Let's talk about one game. One game this year. It was at Prairie Heights, I believe it was. Threw a perfect game no-hitter and hit for the cycle in one game. That is the absolute perfect game that you can have, period. Obviously, we're not giving him this award for one game, so let's look at the rest of his stats. Just under 100 strikeouts, 99 strikeouts, over 2 strikeouts per innings pitched, struck out 50% of the batters he faced all year with a 0.99 ERA. That's his mound stat, or that's his pitching stats. Now, at bat, just as strong, batted .515 batting average, .627 on base percentage. He only had 1 home run, only 1 home run. How did you make it? That's horrible. I'm joking, of course. 10 doubles, 4 triples, 20 stolen bases. Who are we talking about? We're talking about the phenom from East Side, Owen Willard of the NECC. A fantastic year. And Owen Willard, or his dad, help me out with his dad's first name. Aaron Willard. Yeah, I call him Coach Willard all the time, so I couldn't remember the first name. But I'm so happy that Owen earned this, and Coach Willard was actually there today helping coach the for the North-South All-Star game. So just a great moment for him. Owen Willard is committed to play for Coach Schreiber at Purdue Fort Wayne, which is just a phenomenal pickup for them. So great all-around performance season. And that, folks...
Owen was the North-South All-Star Series MVP.
That's right. So, a lot of people say, well, it's only a
He was
2-8
for
team.
7 at the plate. He struck out all 6 batters he faced.
Yeah, all 6 batters he faced. So a lot of people say, 2A team, did he play the competition? Well, we saw him, we knew it. We didn't need proof in the North-South All-Star game, but if anybody did, you got to see it this weekend.
That was the
going
cherry
against
on
the
top
best in the
because
state.
all this was decided before this weekend.
Exactly. And, as we look at this right here, this is our 2022 BAI 9, the top impact players in the state of Indiana. And, one of the things we joked about with the coaches as we talked to them all over the state, one of the goals of this was to just minimize offending offend the least number of people as possible. Because there are so many great players. And before we wrap things up, let's Steve, I'll throw out a couple names. Maybe you throw out a couple names if you want to, of some of the people that were on the list that just missed the cut. A couple that off the top of my head, I'm thinking, Peyton Nix from Andrean. Unbelievable player. He batted 425 this year. He also struck out 32% of the batters he faced. And you saw him in the state finals. He just, I don't want to say dominated, but for the most part, he was in absolute control the whole game there versus Brebeuf. And, in a pitcher's duel versus Andrew Dukanich, and Dukanich, obviously, Dukanich is facing a lineup that had 5 kids over 400, but Peyton Nitsch going up against Brebeuf, he totally controlled the game. Another, and maybe this is one to keep an eye on going forward, Bradley Farrell, South Central of Union Mills. This guy you got to watch. He was only a sophomore this year. Another that was on our list all year, Kiefer Wilson of Greencastle. He had a great weekend this weekend. Garrison Burrill of Center Grove was another. As we look up north, some that Brady Ginnivan, if I'm pronouncing it right, from Munster. John Curl of Kokomo. Connor Mitch of Lake Central. Brody Chrisman of Zionsville. He was there this weekend as well. We mentioned
Tucker Biven of New Albany.
Tucker Biven, yep.
Yep, he's going to Louisville. He's the only Indiana player to get a high school Gold Glove. He's a shortstop.
Yes, exactly. So thinking about that, that's this list right here is, and now another reason I wanted to mention some of these names, folks, is so that you can see how difficult this was. Let's throw some more here out there at you. Brady Yeyer, coach's son at Shakamak, batted .559, and had trying to look at the 7 home runs. Gabe Esslinger of Lytton Stockton, also batted .559, and I'm trying to look here. He had 7 home runs, 9 doubles. We mentioned Garrison Burrill. Trying to think of some of the others. Aiden Coffey's on it. Andrew Wiggins of Heritage Christian, very easily. He was a finalist for this list. Batted .442. Just a great player for Heritage Christian. Oscar Pegg of Shakamak had 12 home runs. He was right there. And another Linton Stockton kid, Bracy Brenneman from Linton Stockton, had 12 home runs. Jake Winsenreed, Lawrence North, had 9 home runs. Jordan Malott of Carroll of Fort Wayne. Luke Willman of Wapahani. Braden, I mentioned Brady Yeyer, mentioned Gabe Esslinger. Got to throw out Mo Lloyd of Southwood. 12 home runs. He's an underclassman. He'll be back next year. What are some of the players, Steve, that might have been on your list, maybe that I didn't name?
Well, you hit with quite a few. I tell you who I was impressed with this weekend, and it's probably he had a season that was all-star worthy, and it was cool that he was there. But I want to tell you the story about Keaton Mahan. They're going to be talking about him. He's from Westfield. Played for Ryan Bennell for the Shamrocks. He had a home run to win for the North in the first game Saturday in All-Stars. They came back, tied the game at 6, 2-2 count. No, 1-2. What was it? 2. Anyways, he had.
I think it got to full count.
Yeah, I had it written down here. Anyways, he had a grand slam, win the game. Walk off.
Mm-hmm.
And they got the GPS out, and they figured out that the ball rolled and it went 570 feet. So which means it probably went 475 feet in the air and then rolled. That we don't know that, but because people were saying, "Oh, that's the farthest high school home run I've ever seen."
Yeah.
And the funny thing is that he was having fun this weekend. You could that's what it's all about, is having fun, especially an all-star game. You want to show your wares and prove that you belong there. But in the seventh inning, he comes up and he's giving the catcher his phone and getting a selfie with the umpire, and then he puts the phone back in his pocket. I'm thinking, if he has to slide, he better slide head first. He didn't.
Yeah.
He had a fielder's choice, and then after the game, after he hit that home run, I went up and I was talking with him, and I says, the only thing that would have made that cooler moment is if you got that selfie in the ninth inning. And he said, well, I got the umpire on my side, so they called that a fair ball. and then today, they needed kind of a stopgap, so he pitched today, and he was throwing ephus balls, and he was throwing the ball 40 miles an hour a few times.
Nice.
He struck out some guys. He threw the ball, I don't know, 75, 80 miles a few times, but yeah, he was just he had a clean inning. He didn't give up any runs.
Nice.
So, yeah.
Well, as we wrap things up, I want to drop a few more names here, just because these people are worthy of mention for the season they had. Ethan Like, pitcher at Evansville Central, was right there in the final cut. Drew Dixon of Zionsville, also, especially to how he did towards the end of the year. Got to mention Wyatt Blinn of Cascade. 128 strikeouts this year. Of course, we mentioned Grayson Knight of University had a fantastic year. Corbin Snyder of Eastern of Greentown. Brennan Martin of Duggar Union. I got to throw that name out there too. Then some names here that I'll take them on any pitcher's list. You're talking Braden Reisdorf.
Yes. Noble was a really good pitcher and a hitter.
That's right. Kobe Johnson of Hauser had 2 no-hitters this year. Of course, we got to mention Alec Hirschberger, 128 strikeouts. He was in the Futures game, did well. Just a few more. Brexton Betancourt of Bluffton, Pete Walsmith of Knox, Drew Lanning of Lawrenceburg, Evan Lopez of Bremen, Connor Sims of Greenfield Central was a finalist. Then I mentioned this guy earlier. I couldn't remember his name, though. Is Grant Kessler of Morristown, led the state in strikeouts per innings pitched at 2.217, and he struck out 55.
How about Bryson Hanna from John Glenn?
Yes, exactly. We could go on with this list. This is how talented the state was. I told you guys early on, if I'm starting a team, I may be picking players that aren't on this list. I think of Gage Stanifer of Westfield. And I think of, as a matter of fact, I just mentioned their name, Gage Staniver of Westfield, and the Fishers kid that I'm looking for his name here real quick.
Tate Werner?
Yes, but
one of his teammates, Tate Werner, pitched today.
Joey Wilmuth. I think of Joey Wilmuth of Fishers, and I think of Gage Stanifer of Westfield. And these two guys it's like they've got cannons for arms. Gage Stanifer hit 97 this year. He's a commit with Cincinnati D1. We will be seeing him in the major leagues this year. So these are just more examples, and I could list names just all day long of how good a lot of these players are, and how hard it was to narrow it down to 9. So as we wrap things up, I want to congratulate our first class, the inaugural season, the inaugural class of the BAI 9 right here. This is a group, Steve, this is the first year we did this show. So this is a group that it'll always be a special group for me. None of these guys know me, but they were a special group because I followed them all year long. And that during the season, we always had what we called the BAI Final Out. And what that was just a hot topic, that we, kind of something we wanted to, some kind of rhetorical dialogue that we talked about related to baseball throughout the year. But me, anybody that talks to me knows that I'm always about the next pitch. It's always about going forward. It's always about pressing forward in this game. Matter of fact, I told one of the young kids that I gave the bat to today, you got that bat, but that's already in the past. What matters now is what happens next. So if you weren't on this list and think you should have been, or you were on this list, don't think you're too, too much, because it's all about what's next. And what's next for baseball across Indiana? Well, this year we had our first attempt at streaming baseball games, and I'll tell you what, like I said at the beginning of the show, it gave me a lot of respect. Not that I didn't already have respect, but it gives me even more respect for the people that do this, regularly and do it so well. Indiana SRN, Keith Myers does it so well, gives me advice. Greg Rakestraw does it so well, gives me great advice. These are guys that we want to promote them and continue to promote them, but we're going to step it up into the broadcasting game, because at the outset, the goal of this show was to promote baseball. And we're going to take it to the next level by starting to stream games. We're going to have a Baseball Across Indiana high school game of the week next year. But we're also going to, we like the travel ball scene. We love the American Legion scene. We're going to try to maybe even get, some college games. Basically anybody that'll take us, because Steve and I, we want to talk baseball. And, we're going to get Sweet Lou. Jeff does this. Jeff can be a broadcaster much better than I can. So we're going to get all the guys involved, the whole team. Don't forget also, after Christmas, we are going to release our annual top stories in baseball across Indiana. This is one thing I absolutely love doing, because it basically summarizes the year, but it's not about stats. It's about the top stories of people we talk to throughout the year. The top stories of, like Steve was just talking about, those stories of the walk-off grand slam and the all-star game. The stories that touch your heart, and the stories that make you raise your hand and be excited, because this is baseball. And baseball in Indiana is what we're celebrating, because it's worth celebrating. One last thing, next year we're going to dive into the sponsorship realm as well. We're going to take sponsors. We're going to be open about this. We're going to be transparent about it. We talked early on that we do this for free. We don't take a penny for it, and we haven't. We've never taken a penny for doing this, because our goal is to promote baseball in Indiana, and it will continue to be our goal, is to promote baseball in Indiana, and that is our goal above everything else. But we want to bring in sponsorships, because we want to do it right, and to do it right, we're going to need to ramp up our operations a little bit, and that requires some financing. So we're going to bring in the sponsorship. So companies, if you want an audience across the state, hit us up, and we'll be hitting you up as well. Steve, any final words as we wrap up our first season of This Week in Baseball Across Indiana?
This has been a lot of fun. I don't need an excuse to talk baseball with people. I'm all the time, looking to find an angle. And I always say everybody has a story. I like to tell baseball stories. This has been one way to do it. And I'm glad we're going to continue to do that.
Well, I am too. And I want to thank you again. I tell everybody, you bring class and good reputation to this outfit, because we don't want it to be all about Hardy the Hat Guy. I love having fun. This is why I was probably never. I coached. I always tell everybody, I put quotes around whenever I say I coach, because I was just the adult on the field, and even that's questionable. But I love the game and have so much fun with it that I kind of get sidetracked very easily. So it's good to have you on the show, Steve. I say that, and I want to thank again the people that have been with us from the beginning, like Jeff Luzatter, Sweet Lou, like Chris Beecham, Papa Beach, I call him, up there in Wabash, as well as Papa De La Coach, Mark De La Garza, up there at Summit City Sluggers. I really want to thank them sincerely, because along with you, Steve, these guys were just the pivotal components that helped us put this together, and the future is exciting. I'm excited about this. We got a year under our belt, and it's only going to get better. Folks, that wraps up our first season of This Week in Baseball Across Indiana. We enjoy we love what we're doing, and we really appreciate those of you who have been around and followed us throughout this year. We're not done. We're still going to be doing some broadcasts as well as our end of the year show. But as far as This Week in Baseball across Indiana, that's a wrap. Folks, we'll see you at the baseball field. Thank you.
See ya.